Hey y'all, this is Dr. Waite here. We're getting into week 2 content. So here we are on our home page. I'm just going to navigate to week 2. So in the learning content, by now you've gone through week 0, seen the syllabus. Week 1, gone through legal research was our topic. And then week 2, we're going to have 2 parts to risk management. So in week 2, we're going to be looking at chapter 3 with some case studies. And then in week 3, so next week, you'll have access to chapter 4 and 5 with some other risk management content from a PDF that I'm going to provide. So the obviously you're watching the overview video right now. So if you click on week 2, you'll see the overview video posted. And then, of course, the PowerPoint is posted here. So I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint right now. This is for chapter 3 for week 2. So I'm going to make this a little narrow here. Okay. So this chapter, again, I'm just going to give kind of a brief overview. It's important that you get into the textbook and read more thoroughly. I've left the slides that are most relevant highlighted. So the big thing about this chapter is basically just looking at, what is risk management and how do we make decisions to minimize risk in our facilities and the places that we work and manage. So the big thing is understanding what risk management is. Basically, it's the process of reducing or eliminating risk of injury or liability, or both, associated with our facilities that we work with or any service that we provide to our athletes, clients, and so forth. So what we really want to do is prevent loss, right? So loss prevention. Basically, we want to work with our insurance companies and lawyers if they're involved to come up with a plan that minimizes risk so that we can maximize the potential for our users to use the facility, right? So we don't want our clients or our athletes or whoever we're working with to be exposed to risk. We want them to be able to come to our facility and train and feel comfortable and capable of improving without walking away injured, right? So a couple of processes for managing risk. First is recognition, and then analysis, and then actions. Recognition, just understanding what your environment is, who you're working with, what your facility is like, understanding your demographics, your environment, and so forth. And then the second part is analyzing, okay, what are the potential risk factors at your facility? And then coming up with an action plan on how you're going to minimize risk. So the first step in recognition, looking at categories of health, safety, and then crowd control. And then what type of hazards are you dealing with? If food is involved, that's obviously falling under the health hazard. Any involvement of fans watching at a facility, what environment are you working around? What's your demographics like? And then crowd control, of course, fans coming into your facilities, even the athletes using the gym, how many participants are in each bay that you're working with, right? The analysis is just recognizing the risk factors. Some examples here: slippery floor, uneven turf, blocked exits, just some primary hazards that you want to address early on. And then, just how do we accomplish minimizing these risks? So common sense, objective sources, overriding legal concepts like negligence that we talked about last week, standard of care, we talked about that as well. And then, of course, evaluating the risk, right? What's the potential severity of the potential injury? Understanding that, there is always going to be a potential for harm or injury to take place, just because, when we're working in recreational facilities, there's heavy objects and, there's always a risk of someone getting hurt. So we always need an action plan. And that's eventually what this chapter gets to. So here's the first slide on action. You look at retention and then treatment. So the text kind of covers these two topics, then transfer and then avoidance. Ultimately, what it comes down to is you have to come up with a plan. So I'm going to skip through some of these slides and just get right to the EAP, which is the Emergency Action Plan. The first facility that I actually managed at a university, it was a weight training facility that was open to both the student body population as well as athletes. And so it was one medium-sized facility that served both. It was at a small Christian university. And I had to come, as the manager of the facility, I had to come up with an emergency action plan. I actually worked with campus facility on this. Thinking about things like, okay, if there's like an issue with an athlete getting hurt, who do you contact? So who's your point of contact? Like, what are your protocols? If there's a heart attack or some type of heart issue, do you have an AED available? And is your team trained on that? So this involves everybody that's working at the facility. So if you're managing the facility, it's really important that you go through the training protocols with this and come up with a good action plan. So some issues to address in the action plan: communication. Employees should know who to communicate with to get emergency systems activated right away. Going through the emergency training, we did several trainings at our facility, and we did it every semester with new staff and even returning staff. Location at EMS, that could be an AED machine as well. Role of the first responders. So what do you do as the first responder in your facility, or what should your employees do? When to call 911. Documentation, education, and training. So these are all things to address in your EAP assessment. So just some good things to look at here: planning, communication. Of course, these are all extra content to look over. Another big thing to focus on in this chapter is the use of ADA. So facilities and ADA. Title III basically states that all disabled individuals need full access to the facility. So making sure that your facility meets ADA requirements is huge. And then the facility design, of course, is very strict to ADA, and you need to make sure that your facility is up to date with those protocols. So anyways, the chapter has a lot of good content on developing emergency programs, your basic action plan, following the laws and restrictions and so forth. So become familiar with these, look over these details, and that's risk management for this week. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to reach out to me. Keep up the good work, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.